This video, I'm going to outline the exact framework you need to know using the scientific method of proving that what you're saying is right. This means we only change one variable at a time, so you can get to the whole truth of the matter no matter what area of personal finance you are discussing. If you've ever been confused about how all the numerical pieces of helping people with their finances fit together, and more importantly, what goes into creating massive success in improving financial efficiency, creating more cash flow, and helping people buy whole life insurance and term insurance up to their human life value, and in general being able to prove how any personal financial product and strategy work with both the costs and the gains, then this is the video for you. Maybe you're a financial advisor or life insurance agent and you don't yet know what you don't know, or you're anyone else helping people with their finances, like CPAs or mortgage brokers, and you haven't been able to show the numbers even if you know the numbers. In this video, I'll show you how human life value oriented, whole life friendly advisor agents like you and me can easily demonstrate and prove any personal financial concept, both numerically and in a more visual way using graphs. In video number 1, we talked about how now is the right time to make sure you are incorporating the time value of money in all of your personal financial discussions so you can have calculators to be a colorful cue card for your story. Then, in video number 2, we covered the second step you will use, which is the funding calculator, so you can prove the net internal rate of return on whole life insurance cash value and the annual rate of return you would have to earn in another asset to accumulate the same amount of value out in the future. So, if you haven't seen these videos, go back and watch them now and then come back to this one. Today, I'm going to build on what we already discussed by giving you the complete framework of a 15-year versus a 30-year mortgage discussion, done properly, following the scientific method of changing only one variable at a time, so you can be very confident in knowing how to speak about this very emotional topic. And also clear that there's a big difference between objective and method. It builds on everything we've talked about so far in this series. And most importantly, it outlines everything from the opportunity cost involved in this decision to the psychological impact of getting clarity around the difference between one's objective of what they want to get done versus the method they use in doing it. I'm also going to share proof that paying cash for a home still has an interest cost. This most emotional subject in personal finance often trips people up because they get confused between the perceived peace of mind they are seeking and how best to get it and keep it. Once you use this, you'll never have to worry about a client being unclear and not taking action again. This will help you break free of that frustration and is key in helping you speak with confidence, knowing there is a place where you can look up the answers to questions like this and experience the value of using calculators to be a colorful cue card for your story. We've got a lot to cover today, so make sure you've got your pen and paper ready so you can take notes as you follow along. Anytime you're trying to discuss mortgages, it can be hard since they're attached to such an emotional place in our lives, the home we live in. Because in the beginning, everything's new, things like opportunity cost, the concept that paying cash still has an interest cost, and that there's a difference between objective you're seeking and the method you use to get there. And then you need to know the role each aspect plays in the emotional component of the people you are speaking with. It's not easy. On top of that, even if you have experience with helping people get to their full efficiency in personal finances, utilizing mortgages in the most effective way, and buying whole life and term insurance up to their human life value, you're always looking for that 80-20. You don't have time to waste, so you want to find where 20% effort will produce 80% more in benefits. That's why the Truth Concepts 360 membership is going to save you a ton of time. This is the exact framework you want to have in your financial practice in order to always know you are telling the truth. Okay, now, with that said, I need to warn you before we get rolling. This video is one tiny component of a full-service financial practice. It doesn't give you the complete overview yet. I want to make things easy for you by covering that 20% that makes a big difference, like we talked about earlier. So, although the framework only gives you the high level view, stay with me because I'll walk you through the 20% that gives you an 80% increase in results. So, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's video, starting with the loan analysis calculator. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the difference between a 15-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage using the loan analysis calculator. And the first thing we need to know is what is our loan balance. So if we had a $500,000 house that we could get 80% loan to value, we'd have a $400,000 loan balance. And let's use a 6% loan rate. And we're going to compare on the left-hand side a 360-month mortgage to a 180-month mortgage using the same loan rate. And it's a scientific experiment, so we need to keep everything the same initially. So we're going to keep the same 6% for all our interest rates as we go through this analysis. And what we see when that happens is the 360-month mortgage is going to have a cumulative amount of payments of $863,000, which means we paid $463,353 in interest on top of the $400,000 of principal for that option. Whereas with the 180-month mortgage, we're only going to pay $207,577 in interest. So a considerable difference in the amount of interest that gets paid between these two, and a lot of decisions are made around that. The downside of this is when we look at interest over time, we can't just add it up because it leaves out the time value of money. But if this were true, that because of the amount of cumulative interest paid on the shorter mortgage means that it's less expensive, then what would be the cheapest? And the cheapest option would be cash, right? No interest. We would only pay $400,000. So in this analysis, because of the difference in cumulative interest, if that was the determining factor of which one had the most cost, cash would be the cheapest, the 180-month mortgage would be next, and the worst one would be the 360-month mortgage with the highest amount of additional cumulative interest on top of the principal. Okay, so let's take this a little further and think about this. If I wanted to take advantage of what's supposed to be the least expensive here, that cash option, then I would have to take $400,000 out of my existing assets. Now, $400,000, as we can see down here in the lower left, at 6% for 360 months would have grown to $2,409,000. So my decision today to pull $400,000 out of my existing assets doesn't have a cost of $400,000. We have to have time in there, and the time needs to be the same on everything we're comparing. We've chosen to compare this over the 360-month time frame. So cash over that time frame means a $400,000 decision today is going to cost us $2.4 million over the 30 years. But if we were to do that, we would free up that $2,300 payment we're making to our mortgage company. What's interesting is if we paid the house off and we funneled the $2,300 we're no longer having to pay to the mortgage company into the same account we pulled the $400,000 out of, at the end of 30 years, we'd have the same $2.4 million in there. So another way to look at this is either of these two decisions gets us to the same place at the 30-year mark. Now, in between here and there, they're wildly different as to amount of money we have and where it is. But at that point in time, either of these decisions has our house paid off in 30 years and $2,409,000. So what about the 180-month mortgage? Well, if we look at that one, we have a higher payment, but we only have to pay it for 180 months. And at the end of 180 months, on $3,375.43 a month,
we end up with $981,637 if it's growing at a 6% interest rate. But do we have a valid comparison at this point? We're comparing the 30-year mortgage over 30 years, the cash over 30 years, but at this point, the 15-year mortgage is only over 15 years, which is not accurate. We have to take that 981 out another 180 months. And when we do that with no additional payments, earning 6% for 180 months, we end up with the same $2,409,000 at the end of that time frame. So while all of these have different amounts of interest paid, cash being zero, the 180 month being $207,000 in interest, the 30-year being $463,000 in interest, the reality is at the 30-year mark, all of them cost exactly the same. And that's because their interest rates are all the same in this comparison. And if we go to next and we apply that, here's what we can see. And if we watch this growth, we can see the 30-year mortgage is $2,409,000, the 180 has a cost of $2,409,000, and the cash has a cost of $2,409,000. What else do we have to consider? Well, if the loan interest is tax deductible, and let's say that was in a 24% tax bracket, then what happens is we see a difference in the cost. And the one that was supposed to be the most expensive, the 360-month mortgage, is actually the least expensive at $2,037,000 versus cash, which is supposed to be the most expensive, or the least expensive is actually the most expensive at $2,409,000. And the 180-month is in between there. But the longest mortgage is actually cheaper when we can take advantage of a tax deduction on that interest. And here's what that looks like. So here's our payments, here's our tax deduction, and here's that tax deduction saved at a 6% rate. And so in our 360-month mortgage, we have $371,000 as the value of our tax deduction off of the same gross cost of $2,409,000 as it is on the 180 mortgage, but the 180 mortgage only has $222,000 in as a value of the tax savings. So again, 360-month mortgage in this scenario actually becomes the cheapest. What else impacts this scenario and decision? Inflation. So here's how inflation works. Most people look at inflation as one of those things that continues to increase the cost of things we buy. But when we have something that is a level payment over time, like the mortgage, our mortgage doesn't go up with inflation, but our income goes up. And because our income goes up, that level payment feels like less and less and less each year. It's going to stay at the same $2,398, but it's going to feel like less due to the impact of inflation pushing our income up. And so let's say that we had a cost of living of 3%. And over this time frame, that payment of $2,398 in that last month is actually going to feel like $976. So again, we have some advantages with that longer mortgage. And in most cases, it's not more expensive as most people are conditioned to assume. And they're making that assumption because of the difference in the amount of interest paid and leaving out the critical piece of time value of money.
Later. Let's do a quick review of what we learned today. The gross cost of a 15-year mortgage is the same as the gross cost of a 30-year mortgage, which has the same gross cost as paying cash when all things are equal. In this case, time and interest rates. The only one thing that is different between each of the three options is the amortization period. This is completely different from what most people have been incorrectly taught by calculations that ignore the time value of money. In other words, comparing only the sum of the interest paid in each of the options rather than comparing the actual cost of each option. With the correct math over the same illustration period and accounting for the tax deduction, one can start to see which is truly more efficient. Prior to working through the loan analysis calculator, I mentioned the difference between objective and method. What if your client's objective was to have their house paid off in 15 years? And what if we could accomplish that through another method? Maybe an objective of paying off a mortgage in 15 years doesn't require the usual method of incorporating a 15-year mortgage. By using a 30-year mortgage method instead and accumulating the payment and tax difference, we could create enough money to pay off the mortgage at the 15-year time frame and still achieve the original objective of the client, which was paying off the house in 15 years. This would allow the client all of the advantages and higher certainty that come with the 30-year mortgage method. And while many people have been conditioned to believe that it is a shorter mortgage, this would allow the client all of the advantages and higher certainty that come with the 30-year mortgage method. And while many people have been conditioned to believe that a shorter mortgage reduces risk, it's actually the opposite. The shorter mortgage actually increases risk due to the higher payment and reduced cash flow. Isn't it easier seeing how everything fits once you know and can show the numbers? Most importantly, doesn't it feel good knowing what you should focus on right now? Regardless of where you are in your journey, do you see how this clarity will help you do a better job in providing your clients with a full-service financial practice, especially when you know you can have a place to go where you can look up the accurate answers easier and faster? Now that you got those wheels turning, I want to hear from you. I know you picked up a lot of ideas from this video, and now's the time to put it into practice. So let me know in the comments what your first step will be. And if you found this video helpful, others will too. So give someone else a hand by sharing this video on Facebook, X, or even by sending the link to a friend. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to implement what you learned today easier and faster. If you're a holistic financial advisor, this lays out the exact path you can take to have a place where you can look up the answers to learn the whole truth, meaning the cost and the gains, about all things financial. And if you're anyone else helping people with their finances, like insurance agents, CPAs, mortgage brokers, you'll build on what you've already created by following specific steps designed to get you past what's holding you back and get you on track to exceed your goals. Speaking of learning how to prove all things in the personal finance space numerically, we've been hearing from a number of people who've had questions about the Truth Concepts 360 membership, and I'd love to see you in there. In the next video, we'll talk more about the membership and how you can join. So, if you're interested in moving forward and want to know how, you'll want to join me in the next video when I lay it all out for you. But for now, I want to leave you with this. Just by taking part in this workshop, you're already closer to knowing how to know the numbers so you can choose whether or not to show the numbers. And you gain some knowledge that will give your voice confidence. Think about video 1, where you learned how to let calculators be a colorful cue card to your story, not the actual story itself, because the story should come from you. This training alone has shown you how to have the confidence in your head and heart that come through in your voice when speaking to people, whether you're showing them the financial graphs or not. And it's amazing how simple it can be done once you have the right steps. Then you made big strides in video 2, where you saw how to calculate the internal rate of return on whole life insurance cash value and how it relates to the rates of return of other assets, all on a level playing field through the use of the funding calculator and the life values tool. That's huge. And knowing this will continue to pay off now and into the future. And today, you got the complete framework of a 15-year versus 30-year mortgage discussion so you can help people determine the best method to accomplish their objective using accurate math. Isn't it easier knowing every step along the way? To make it even better, I created the mortgage macro to enable you to cut to the chase faster and with less demand so you can achieve bigger results. In just a few days, you've learned so much about how to know you know what you know, so thoroughly that no one can shake your confidence. And also, where to go to prove whatever financial concept it is you are discussing. Furthermore, you know there's a place to go where you can look up the answers to your questions and easily learn a calculator to give you an accurate answer. So in the next video, I'll share the next step you'll want to take on your journey. I'm so excited about what's in store for you. I'll see you in the next video.